today we're discussing the Gallopers. With me in discussion are Michael Kwe Jr., Nana Kofi Damwa, and Emmanuel Asigri, all members of the NPP communications team. Since 2009, if you've been reading the news or if you've been a political watcher, you would find out that the President Mills administration has been saddled with paying a lot of judgment debts. Judgment debts, judgment debts, judgment debts, day in, day out. The latest on the newsstands is African Automobile Limited, a story that was broken by Honorable Deputy Minister of Information, Honorable Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa, a few weeks ago, purporting to stand up high on the tenets of good governance and blaming the NPP for not doing due diligence in the purchase of some 110 Gallopers from African Automobile, and then the withdrawal of that case from court in order for government to settle $1.5 billion. Well, I would not say much. I have a full house here, a fully packed house of strong men on the NPP communications team. So I'd leave them to do the discussions. I'll start with Emmanuel Asigri. Yes, sir. You've heard how we've been galloping in the last 2 weeks. Yeah. And how has been your galloping?
Well, thank you very much, Perry. Let me say good evening to our cherished viewers. And to start, Perry, I have been very disturbed since the story broke out. And I think we've entered into the 3rd week since the story, which emanated from Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa, purporting to be putting out a story which he indicated that was supposed to let the Ghanaian populace know what we, and when I talk of we, the NPP in government had done with regards to the purchase of these Galloper vehicles, Hyundai Galloper vehicles, which they claim we refuse to take or accept from the company that had been contracted to bring the vehicles into the country for the use of the 110 assemblies at the time. And listening to the Deputy Minister on that fateful Monday, I think a network associated with this medium in which we are sitting in today, he stated that we in government at the time refused to accept these vehicles, and for that matter, the issue of cost or damages or whatever it is called that the African Automobile Company is making as a matter of claims on the government of Ghana today. And on this subject matter, the gentleman put out some information which struck me. And on that fateful evening, I was driving to pick my son from school. He indicated that the 1.5 billion he had put out was made up of so many areas that the company had put claims on. And one area that struck me was when he talked about the issue of demurrage. Quickly, I had to break and then ask myself questions, because to the best of my knowledge,
even before you get to demurrage, this whole issue started from 1999, when government, via an invoice from Africa Automobile, ordered vehicles by responding to an invoice, and that constituted a contract in the view of that government. And the substantive minister at the time is today Professor Kwame Ahoy. So let's take it from that angle.
I was bringing the issue of the demurrage because I was trying to just give an overview of when Okudzeto Ablakwa started I mean, when he started responding to the issue he had granted an interview to the Daily Graphic. And that was where he started from. But once you want us to move further, I would leave that, and then when the time is given, I'll come back. Perry, like you've indicated, questions have come not just from the MPP side, but across the length and breadth of Ghanaians, demanding that if Africa Automobile is making this claim, there should be something that they should be standing on, and that is a contract document, which should be giving them this power to make this humongous claim they are making on the government of Ghana. And since the question was posed, as far back as 3 weeks ago, members of government who have decided to be spokespersons and defenders of African Automobile Company could not show to us or indicate by any means where there was a contract for this whole issue. Now, in the course of it, Professor Ahoy, who you mentioned, indicated that he was going to address the press on this matter. Knowing who this gentleman is, it was shocking that what was supposed to be a press conference turned out to be a press statement, so that nobody will have questions to interrogate him, for him to find himself wanting. He came out with a press statement, and even in it, he could not tell or show where there was a contract for Africa Automobile Limited to making the claims they are supposed to be making. Perry, I have in my hands a statement of claim, which is a court document. And in it, it would interest viewers to know that what Okudato Ablakwa in this studio last Saturday purports to indicate that there is a contract is probably what I am holding. And when you look at it, where he is talking about a contract, let me just read a portion of it. The terms of the said contract hereafter, called the first contract, were mainly contained in two documents, namely, and viewers, please take note of this, namely, the plaintiff's, that is Africa Automobile Limited, the plaintiff's pro forma invoice, and the numbers of the invoice, pro forma invoice, are quoted in there. Number MH/AA/00/2536/PQ, dated 5th January 2000. And the letter, reference number, sorry, the ministry's letter, reference number, also following, SCR/ADM 4146/volume 3/1, dated 10th January 2000, placing the order for 110 Galloper station wagon with the plaintiff. Wow. This is what is supposed to be the contract that members of government who are speaking for the company where we have had no single director or even staff coming out to tell us that they are indeed making claims, the claims that we are hearing members of government put across. And so, viewers, this is what is supposed to be the contract that government is telling us that is making the Africa Automobile make that claim for that whooping sum of $1.5 billion. A half of what they've been trying to get from China in the last 3 years.
Ima, I'll come back to you. Kofi? Yes, sir. Well, I've heard people who speak on behalf of government say that they put this information out in the public domain to justify what sort of good governance the President Mills's leadership seeks to, portray or project. And that the NPP government was not diligent enough in dealing with these matters, leading to losses of colossal sums to the tune of 1.5 billion. What are your opening remarks?
Perry, the first thing I'll say that this is a sad thing. As a youth, I'm very, very sad because of the attempt that is being made. Kwekumbako captures it perfectly that, sorry, we are not fools. I do not know what Okudato Ablakwa sought to do by putting out such information in the public domain. And interestingly, is the fact that he couched it as an attempt in good governance. Let's put that there, but then I'll come back to it. I just want to deal with a couple of things quickly. We've had so many arguments out there in the public domain that at the time when this so-called contract was executed, there was no Public Procurement Act, and so that was the norm at the time. That is a false thing, because we had the States Contracts Act of 1960, which showed exactly what was to be a contract. It said that the Attorney General was supposed to draw out forms, and any contract of the sort was supposed to be given to the Attorney General for him to peruse and all of that. The point must also be made that the Attorney General at the time was not even aware of the existence of this purported contract that is made up of 2 documents, that is the pro forma invoice and then a letter from the ministry. So that claim that the Public Procurement Act did not exist at the time, and so what they did was right, is a false claim. Let's get that clear, first of all, before we even go there. And then I would want to say that Professor Kwame Nahoi, I'm very disappointed in the man. I'm extremely disappointed in the man because if you look at the sort of information he sought to put out there in the public domain to befuddle the issues, then really, we are beginning to see where all these judgment debts are coming from. We are beginning to see the sources of all of these judgment debts. Let me just show out something. In his press release, he stated something that certain facts were peculiarly in his domain of knowledge. Now let's interrogate what those facts, in quote, are and see whether they have been proven to be true or not in the course of the public discourse and as more information has been made public. First of all, he said that, there was a contract, and so if there was no contract, how come BNI invited him and all of that? We proved that, first of all, it is his actions that gave a contract, not the documentation. That's the first point that we have to prove. Professor Kwame Nahoi, singularly, by his actions at the ministry, was what caused anything like a contract to exist, and not the documentation. Because if documentations are to be considered, then there was no contract by the statutes of Ghana. He is the one who took delivery of the 23 vehicles. Anyway, we'll deal with those things later as well. But he's the one who took delivery of those vehicles, and that sorts the contract. In contracts, you can either have an explicit contract or an implied conduct. Conduct gives lead to a contract. So that is the first point that we have to deal with.
Well,
Number 2.
Hold your guns there. We'll take a break. Okay. You're making a point.
Yeah, I just want to recap the things. I'm saying that Professor Kwame Nahoi sought to put out a couple of lies in his press release, and we are attacking those issues one by one. We first of all established the fact that the contract that, as it exists now, if there's any contract, was illegal, one. And if there's any action that has led to the assumption of a contract, then it was a single action of Professor Kwame Nahoi himself. He, by his actions, and not by the fact that any correct document was signed, brought Ghana into that contract with African Automobile Limited. That's the first point that we have to make very, very clear. The second, and again, we have to make the points that by that, Professor Kwame Nahoi stands to be, he's liable to be charged for causing financial loss to the states, amongst other crimes, because he knew very well what the laws were, and he chose to sideline the laws and rather take certain steps that will put Ghana into a contract illegally. That's the point that must be made. Again, let's examine his claims that he makes the points that Africa Automobile Limited gave 2 cars to the ministries for trial purposes. That's a lie. Because according to the writ of summons, that the statement of claim that was made by Africa Automobile Limited, and I hold the document in my hands, 26th of October 2005, they claim that it wasn't 2 cars, it was 3 cars that were handed over to the ministry.
So what happened to
So 1 car is missing. That's the first point that we have to make.
Is that part of the reasons why we're paying 1.5 billion?
It could be, but the point is that he is telling us that 2 cars were given. The rate, and I want to read it so that we all know. In or around October 1999, the plaintiffs at the request of the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development supplied 3 Galloper 2 vehicles. And at the time, Professor Kwame Nahoi was the minister. And this was something that was submitted to the courts of Ghana. So 3 vehicles were supplied. Professor Kwame Nahoi came to tell the whole of Ghana that 2 vehicles were supplied. 1 vehicle is missing.
He might come out to say it's forgotten.
That's the first point.
Is one of these vehicles the one that either went to Bulensi or Gushegu?
I will deal with that. And then the second point that we have to make is the valuation of the vehicle. Professor Kwame Nahoi said that there was supposed to be a trading element of the cost of the cars. And so we're supposed to bring back all the 110 short chassis vehicles that were purchased in 1994. He quoted a figure of $396,000 as a valuation for all the 110. I have here in my hands the documentation from Africa Automobile Limited. This was also a document that was submitted to the court. They claim that the valuation done amounted to a total figure of $440,000. So the discrepancy between their figure and Professor Kwame Nkrumah's figure is $44,000. That amount of money is missing in the fray. Converted into Ghana cedis, you get 858. That is missing. 858,000. Or in old Ghana cedis, that's 850 million cedis. That's missing. Which is missing in all of these calculations. Again, the point must be made that, Professor Kwame Nkrumah in a statement said that 23 cars were given or imported into the country specifically as part of the execution for this contract after we pay them a total sum of 8 billion. That is also a blatant lie. Because two things. Number one, the 23 cars were not imported into the country for the purposes of the contract. I have here again the document from Africa Automobile Limited, and I read, about February 2000, the ministry made a desperate call on the plaintiff to immediately deliver to it a number of units, blah, blah, blah. But the point here that must be made is that the plaintiff had in stock 23 gallopers for normal sale to the public. The plaintiff obligedly delivered the 23 galloper vehicles, which means that the gallopers were already in the country. The ministry went in their showroom. The ministry went to ask for them, and they were given. Again, no payment at this stage had been made. We are told that even though the ministry signed the check in January, the actual amount of monies were realized in September of 2000. So at this point, if Professor Kwame Nkrumah,
after a lot of delays,
if Professor Kwame Nkrumah tells the entire country of Ghana, and they say book no lie, so his press statement is there, all of Ghana can go and pick it and read. If he tells us that because payments were made, 23 vehicles were delivered, that is a lie. We went and collected the 23 vehicles, knowing very well that we had issued a check that was bouncing, which was criminal in the first place. That is a point that has to be made.
And for a government to issue checks.
For a government to issue checks of the sort is a very serious matter. Very, very, very serious matter. But to leave that point also aside and to move forward, we would have to, have no chance, but also go on to say that in point 12 of what was said, okay, we said that they brought 23 vehicles. We're doing a trading, and so we are supposed to have delivered to them 23 vehicles, the short chassis Pajero vehicles. We are supposed to have given them. But Africa Automobile claims that they received only 22.
So there's one more missing
So
vehicle.
there's one more missing vehicle.
Or adding to the 1.5 billion.
Now, so you see, when we were receiving vehicles, we received 3, we reported 2.
When
we were giving them vehicles, we gave them 22, we gave them 23. Sorry, 22 instead of 23. So one vehicle is missing. In all of this, 2 vehicles are missing.
Okay.
Let's put that aside and go to the SEPS documentation.
Wrap up for me and then let me go to Mike.
Let's go to the SEPS documentation. SEPS says clearly that as at the point where they went to inspect the vehicles at the showroom of Africa Automobile Limited, there were 69 vehicles instead of 87.
After the importation.
After the importation.
The actual importation.
The warehouse, after the actual importation, when the warehousing was done and SEPS went to inspect, there were 69 instead of 87. So there's an issue there. Again, Africa Automobile on their part, instead of importing...
And let me cut you in. How many vehicles are at local government as we speak?
That is an issue we don't know. They have fenced the cars in and they are not allowing us to go and count, or they are mishandling pressmen that are going there. But in any case, for that division as well, you realize that there's 16 of the cars that are in question. So 2 plus 16, that is 18 vehicles that are in question. Despite all of these things, a very simple analogy that can be drawn is, look, I'm asking you to give me 110 vehicles. I'll pay you a total sum of money of 17 million, as Okujeto was saying. Fine. I've already paid you 8 billion, which means I've paid for half. So if anything at all, by now, 55 vehicles should be in my possession. Interestingly...
And the 17 million is supposed to be a mistake as well. Well, I'll come back to you. Mike, we are galloping gradually.
Yes, a very good evening to your viewers. And it's very good to discuss this thing in its entirety. And I'm very happy that the Nakofi raised the point, which was, if half has been paid for in advance, how come we don't have half the vehicles in our possession?
Especially after we had traded in 22.
This is a very serious matter. But since Emmanuel and Nana Kofi have raised multifaceted angles with regard to this thing. Let us even look at more that would make this thing whole. Everybody knows there's something in contract, and Mr. Kwame Nahua in particular knows, as a senior lawyer himself, that we have something called mitigation of loss. Now, if, for example, Perry, you bring in some vehicles for me to buy, and I refuse to buy the vehicles, what you do is you put it on the open market. And if the vehicles, I purported to buy them for about 20,000 each, and you put it on the open market, you might usually not get the full price for it because of the fact that you'd want to sell it quickly, or you might be incurring expenses for demurrage and so on. And so since the car is in your name, like Seps told us that when the vehicles came to Ghana, the vehicles were in the name of AAL, which is usually, or which I'll say is very unusual, because when the government decides to deliver cars or to import cars, what happens is that the name is in the government's name, so that all those various exemptions apply immediately.
Because government does not pay taxes.
Thank you
on
very
vehicles.
much. So let us even go on to the issue of the fact that the cars were in the name of AAL, for example. The simple question is, when the government rejected the vehicles in 2001, for whatever reason, did they mitigate their loss? Did they sell the car on the open market for, let's say, 3/4 of it or half the price, and then come to court and say, look, I was supposed to get $1 million,
But I
couldn't get $1 million because you forced me to go and sell the cars on the open market, so I got only 500,000. And so, court, I've mitigated my loss. According to the laws of contract, mitigation of loss is an essential component and aspect of it. They didn't do that. They left the cars from 2001 all the way to 2012. And today, you come and tell us that you want compensation of 1.5 billion.
But Mike, even before you go on, I have some experience in car whatever.
Yes.
If a dealer imports vehicles, there is a certain criteria by which you keep these vehicles. If Toyota Ghana imports vehicles, if those vehicles are in their warehouse for 10 years, the vehicles will remain in the same brand new condition for resale at whatever time within that 10-year period. I do not see how you could import vehicles purported to be for government and leave the vehicles to actually rot. And then you expect government to come pay for the. I don't understand it.
You see why?
So apart from selling it on the open market, the vehicles should have been kept in the conditions they were when they were imported.
And you see, that is why it is always good to have people who have what we call expertise in the industry or industry knowledge. You, for example, have a lot of experience of importing cars into the country. So straight away, as soon as I said this, it struck a chord.
Exactly.
But you see, when the NDC propagandists, they want to cheat Ghana, they take advantage and tell people stories. And as for me, there's one thing my mom always told me, say, "Asempa etia." Whenever you start telling a long story for a simple question, your answer is a long story, then you know that the person is lying. And that is why, for me, I'm very surprised that the Deputy Minister of State, I would have allowed him if he's not known to be studying law. I know Okujeto Ablakwa is supposed to be studying law somewhere. Yeah. And you don't learn the rudiments of the basic law of contract to know about mitigation of loss. Kwame Nahua himself, a senior lawyer, doesn't know about mitigation of loss. And you, this same person, comes to tell Ghanaians that I will testify against Ghana. When this is one point that you can even say, look, there's this disagreement, there's that disagreement. We paid for half the cars, we haven't got half. So I'm a bit disappointed that the people of Ghana have been shortchanged. I'm also disappointed that they didn't mitigate their loss so that the people of Ghana would have to pay less. You are excited. And that's the question. For what reason? To go and testify for AAL. Okujeto Ablakwa came on this very, very platform, but for a different program, and told all Ghanaians that a letter from the AAL lawyer was a contract. Perry, if, for example, you have a problem with your wife, and then you come to me, Lawyer Kwe, I want to divorce my wife. I say, why? You know, lawyers, we take instructions from clients.
Yeah.
So Perry says, because she slapped me, because she didn't cook for me, because she cheated on me, yeah? Then I write that in your defense or as your case to the court. Then now, when they ask the judge, oh, why do you think that Mr. Perry is right? Well, Mr. Perry's lawyer wrote that, so Mr. Perry is right. Is that the evidence?
No.
The evidence that's accepted in the court is that Perry's lawyer, AAL's lawyer, says so, so it is the case.
That is your client's
And
side
Mr.
of the story.
Kujetwa Blakwa came and sat here and told Ghanaians that what the lawyer of AAL had been instructed by AAL, whether true or false, is not the lawyer's fault. I take instructions from my client. Perry, how would I know that your wife didn't really slap you? But you think if you tell me as your client, I'll go and say it.
Of course.
So if the AAL tell their lawyer that they have a contract, then the lawyer says, no, you don't have a contract. He'll take it and say, well, he says by conduct, by this, by that, you have a contract, and argue the case on your behalf. So I was shocked to see Mr. Kujetwa Blakwa, somebody studying to become a lawyer, come and tell Ghanaians so that we go and debate it in the marketplace that lawyer Atachian wrote something on behalf of AAL, so Atachian says they have a contract. And then he came and sat here and used it against Ghanaians as a justification for Ghanaians to go and pay 1.5 billion. Isn't this the same Ghana who is asking for 3 billion loan from China?
But we're willing to give up half.
So if
To
we
AAL
can even look
for
at
rotten vehicles.
a settlement, because settlement means we agreed to that amount, but we are going to pay less because we beg you, we are negotiating. See inside for us. Now me how. Mobo Sani. So if this is the case,
Yeah.
J Mobo Sani, how do we even begin to listen to such a cock and bull story? And we see that 1.5 billion, we go and pay the 94 billion euros and million euros. Do you know we've paid 80 million?
Yes.
And this same country, we are looking for 17 million from George Bush.
And we're waiting for donors to come and build boreholes for us. Mike, Parliament moves to clamp down on commercial motorbiking by passing a new legislation. But Okada riders are not happy and vow not to vote. What do you think about this new law, which also bans the use of phones while driving? Join the discussion tonight on PM Express at 9 p.m. Hima?
Yeah. Very.
Still galloping.
Yeah. Mike left his submission from the fact that Okujetwa Blakwa sat here with Lawyer Tachia's letter and listening to all the NDC communicators, they've all been running around with that letter. And the moment...
And before you go on, all of a sudden, Lawyer Tachia, who was accused of carrying and manufacturing dead bodies and was discredited by this government, has become the pillar by which they stand and defend this AAL matter.
Absolutely. And that when this whole letter business started, it drew my mind back to the issue of Woyomi. When we saw a letter that emanated from the Ministry of Finance at the time, written or signed by Honorable Ajma Menu.
Exactly.
When they were reading, I would leave that last paragraph that put a disclaimer in there.
Yes.
It is the same stock and trade. Viewers, we have not come to sit here to do the MPP's bidding. We want to tell you people that these people who are running the affairs of this government, today, are not people who, from the one, have indicated by any shred of evidence that they are people who have this country at heart. Some few months ago, in fact, on that day, that was in 2010, somewhere August 2010, I was on my way up north. I listened to the debate in Parliament, and this is to do with the XTS housing project. Perry, how much were we looking for?
1.5 billion.
To build those houses. When they marshaled the police force or the police service and took them to Parliament and they sat there till midnight, when they forced our parliamentarians on their side to pass the agreement, how much were we looking for? So at the time we were getting these couriers to come in and give us 1.5 billion, we had 1.5 billion that we could dole out to somebody who is making some. I cannot even fault AAL now, because all that has happened all this while, I haven't heard any official from AAL and that fraudulent publication that has been smuggled into daily Ghanaian Times today. I think that those who are behind it, and they know themselves, they should bow their heads in shame. This publication is fraudulent. That you go and put this, indicating what? I want to see one director.
Pro forma
I want to
invoice
see one director.
plus the so-called acceptance letter from the
Mike,
ministry.
all the documents we are talking about here are the documents they put in there.
But do you realize that the purported date for that acceptance letter happens to be a Saturday?
On a Saturday. The dates they claim that these
Local
documentation.
government ministry works on Saturday in Ghana, and we can sign documents.
But you let's leave that aside and then I come to this issue. Today, I'm coming. Today, members of government and their apologies. Those people who are calling themselves senior journalists who become spokespersons of government. When we say, they say we shouldn't say it. I am saying it here on authority because we found a list where when it was presented somewhere, their names were in there as members of government communication team who are speaking for government today. They are telling us that a termination or abrogation of a contract is unheard of. The same Ghanaian Times which they have gone to put that advertisers' information. Viewers, read this. Ministry terminates jobs of non-performing contractors. I'm talking of today, 9th July 2012, Ghanaian Times publication. I didn't know that when contracts are terminated, it is not a bad thing. But when it comes to the African automobile issue, which we did not even say we had terminated the contract, but we indicated that there was no contract to start with. They are going about running amok that we have terminated a contract and has caused the country to be put in this kind of a situation. Now listening or going back to Okujeto Ablakwa, this is the gentleman who has gone round. And even today, again listening to some government communicators saying that when this matter broke out, you've had former members of the Kufuor administration coming out with different pronouncements which indicates that we are contradicting ourselves. Well, they have attributed this to 3 former officials. The former chief of staff, Mr. Kojom Pienim.
He said there was no contract.
Hold on. The former local government minister, Mr.
There was no contract.
Hold on. And then the former deputy minister.
He also said there was no contract.
No, but what they are saying is this, and I want to put it to the viewing public.
They did not say
Hold on.
it's as good as
Hold
there's
on.
no contract.
Hold on.
They
They
said
are
they didn't
saying
sign.
that. Mikey, hold on. They are saying that Mr. Kojom Pienim indicated that the vehicles were not new vehicles and did not meet the standard. And the second thing they have come up with is that Mr. Egedaku, who took over from the late Barredo, who was the first minister of local government, has indicated that there was no contract. And the third one, Honorable Maxwell Kofi has indicated that the vehicles did not meet the specification. And for that matter, they have contradicted themselves. I want to ask the viewing public, if you have a matter where people are speaking to it like we are doing here, we are 3 people speaking to one particular matter on different subjects. I mean, on different issues. We are not veering away from the subject matter. It is a subject matter that the 3 of us are looking at on different fronts. And these gentlemen have put out the issue on this account. And yet, you have government officials coming out to say that what they are saying is inconsistent. When Okujeto Ablakwa is gone out to talk about demurrage, and after that, he runs around and he says that the issue of demurrage is to do with the importer. His first submission, like I started with my maiden submission on this matter, when he spoke on Joy FM Top Story, he indicated that demurrage charges were charges that we were supposed to bear.
But for vehicles that
Hold
were
on.
imported
Well,
in the name of AAL,
that is the
how
point.
could
We have
demurrage?
we have not even taken possession. We have not even taken possession of the vehicles. Yet he stated this. Days later, he ran around and came back and he was talking about demurrage charges, which are issues that the company has put up, and that is what has built up to become the 1.5 they are talking of. In it again, he's talking about franchise. Africa Automobile losing the franchise to bring in Mitsubishi vehicles which they were already or have been known to be trading in. Like Mike said, you have been in this business of vehicles, and we don't even need your expertise to answer this whole matter. What I'm putting out to the viewing public is this. These 2 models of vehicles are coming from different countries. The Galloper is not the make of the vehicle. It is a model. The Galloper is a Hyundai, or what they call Hyundai. A Hyundai Galloper.
From Korea.
From Korea, South Korea. Mitsubishi is Japanese. Now today,
2 different
Okujeto
entities.
Ablakwa, who has become a spokesperson for Africa Automobile Limited, is telling us that the inactions of the Kufuor-led administration caused Africa Automobile Limited to lose their franchise. The question I ask myself with the companies that are dealing in vehicles here in Ghana and have lost the franchise for certain vehicles is this. If you take Mechanical Lloyd, some years back they used to be the sole importers or dealers of Honda vehicles. Today they've lost the franchise. Was this caused by the MPP?
Are they claiming judgment death?
Are they claiming judgment death? Anybody who knows Vodi Techniques were the company that used to import VW vehicles into this country. Today, they are not even in existence. Was it the MPP that caused them to get out of business? You hear them say that we talked about golden age of business, and yet we came and we were going after people's businesses.
But Nana Kumia
Nana indicated on in this same studio on a different program, and has even indicated again today on another program which is linked to multimedia that he, as the Minister of Information at the time in 2004, the president, upon a report that was submitted to him, President Kufuor, about the state of the cinema vans of the Information Services Department, authorized them to get some fleet of cinema vans to offset the old ones that were in place. When they put the matter before the Public Services Commission to float the tender processes, it was this same Africa Automobile Limited that won the bid. If the Kufuor-led administration had made it a policy to run that company, the 8 cinema vans which have been given across this country, and I know that my region, Upper East, that Mitsubishi vehicle, when I was this, we used it a lot.
And besides, the same format of an invoice and an acceptance letter was used in importing sanitary equipment that was accepted.
Absolutely, by the same company.
So if the sanitary equipment met the approval of the government by then, why didn't the Pajeros, the Gallopers meet the government's approval?
Now, Perry, to end, so that my colleagues will take it up. This business of Africa Automobile bringing in these vehicles, which they have gone to take possession, and now it has become an albatross on the neck of government. Perry, if you look at it, it is not like the vehicles were brought in for us to just go and purchase. The agreement they sought to put out is that the vehicles, the Galloper vehicles the Hyundai Galloper vehicles were supposed to come in. So we trade off with the short chassis Mitsubishi Pajero. Today, as we speak, the question I asked in the morning, and I'm still asking, is this. If Professor Ahoy wants us to take him serious, if Okujato Ablakwa wants us to take him serious, can they tell us from the pro forma invoice which they have touted and said that is a contract, where it was stated, irrespective of whatever law was in place at that time, what contract you ever go in to sign, you are supposed to have timelines. What was the period when they were supposed to supply these vehicles? We could not have said that we had entered into a contract where we had given them till the Kingdom come to supply the vehicles and then come and then carry out that trade-off. Now we want to know how long it was, how long they were given to get these vehicles in place to get the trade-off done. Because as we speak, the Gallopers have been taken, and I know that some of these Pajaros are still in the possession of some of the assemblies. Some of them they've even auctioned. So if they are saying that there was indeed a contract, all these things were supposed to be incorporated in there. We are not talking about the current procurement law that is in place, but the contract law which Nana talked about would have stated that you were supposed to have timelines. When were they supposed to bring these vehicles in place? Well, and as we have all these things coming up, now one person who from the very onset of the issue of judgment debts have played an instrumental role is supposed to be the one who was supposed to be chairing this committee to deal with the out-of-court settlement. And that is Right Honorable Barton Odro, the MP for St. Cape Coast. The man who came out and told Ghanaians that in the Wyoming case, Ghana government, the state of Ghana had no case, is the gentleman again behind this whole matter. So, viewers,
who has ordered for the rotten vehicles to be moved from the warehouse of AAL to local government. And then they try to create the impression as if the vehicles were parked at local government for the last 11 years.
And viewers, again, that thing that they put out to try to make the Kufuor-led administration, which incorporates all of us to make it look as if we were people who did not have this country at heart, These vehicles were sent to the local government institute only last year, February. So for anybody to come and then create the impression as if we took possession of the vehicles and left them out there to rot, it is a blatant lie. And then I want to say that these people do not have this country at heart at all.
Still galloping. Viewers, you're on Minority Caucus. Kofi, let's gallop.
Okay, I think that, you know, it's also very important that we show some of these things. And in dealing with communication on some of these matters, one finds himself, you know, having to deal with so many things at once.
Stop galloping right there. Viewers, you can join us on 0302 211 701 and 0302 211 704. Yeah, Kofi.
Okay, now, this is a clear example of NDC lies and inconsistencies, and I'm going to prove them, okay?
This is a party of propaganda. What do you expect?
Well, exactly, but let's look at the cases. In terms of the cost of the vehicles, their own publication, which they have put out today, that is the 9th of July 2012, today, their own publication.
I'm sure
there are two grave inconsistencies that I'll have to point out. First of all, which letter is that? They are saying that it's a letter dated.
Before you start the lies, let's take a call. Hello, Jonathan.
Hello, Perry.
Jonathan, welcome to Minority Caucus.
Thank you very much, Perry. Good evening.
Good evening. Let's gallop.
Yes, so let's gallop. Bongo Nava is galloping with you.
Good one.
Madam Dana Buya, who is the parliamentary candidate for Bongo, and Madam Paulina, who is also the parliamentary candidate for Brisa South. They're all galloping with you, and they all could be saying good evening. Perry, sometimes if I listen to you and listen to someone, a black or Kujatu, I feel ashamed because he's using the same name as you. And I believe it is only under the administration of Professor Mills and NDC that people like this can serve as ministers. Ablakwa is coming to tell us that this Ghana government was having a contract with was having a contract. And the question I have for Ablakwa is that Ablakwa, will he use 1.6 billion to buy Gallup as today? So if Ablakwa can come out and answer that question, can he pick money from his purse or from his bank account which cost 1.6 billion to buy Galloper today? So
Jonathan, we don't have time, so be snappy for us, okay?
So yes, what I'm telling Ghanaians is that they should join us. Look, I voted for the NDC during 2000, 2004, and 2008. But 2012, I've made up my mind with my family that we are going to make sure that we keep the NDC government out of power count 2012.
Thank you for galloping with us. Next caller. Eugene.
Hello, yes sir.
Eugene, good evening. Welcome to Minority Caucus.
You are doing marvelous work for the NPP.
Thank you very much.
No, the NDC, they have no message. Look at how they are misleading the country. Everything they are doing is just unprecedented. This is what they have to add to their manifesto or whatever they have written.
Well, they themselves have said their achievements are unprecedented.
Yes. So it is negative. We should thank the Lord that they have got that word. That's what Pastor Indian said, unprecedented. Even these, minuses, negatives, all these are unprecedented. Thank you for doing marvelous work for MPP.
Thank you. Abdul.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening, Abdul.
Okay. We are very much happy the MPP have competent communicators that actually exposes the lies and the deceit of the NDC government. But there's one thing that Ghanaians need to note. The NDC government have only one priority, and they have one policy that they have implemented since they came back to, since they introduced governance to Ghana, and that is the judgment debt industry. The NDC government has set up and have prioritized the judgment debt industry.
So we have a new sector of the economy.
So what we are saying is that Ghanaians must wake up. Come 2012, we will vote the incompetent, mess-led administration out of power. Come 2012.
Thank you very much, Abdul. Max.
Yeah.
Max, good evening.
Yeah, good evening.
Your Honor, please be snappy.
Perry.
Yeah, please be snappy with your comments. We don't have time.
Okay, what I want to say is, the NDC, they are Pharisees of fallacy. They have nothing better for Ghanaians. I am telling you honestly, not that we are disgracing them. Come and see, even our lower mania crop over here, they use light track. They put light track on quota. When it's rain, master, come and cross-check. This thing that I'm saying, send some of your delegates coming here. And yet, our people are voting for them. Yet, the people have nothing better for Ghanaians. And you must work hard so that all of us eliminate these people. They should never come to power again.
Thank you.
Ghana should become free.
Thank you very much, Max. Kovi,
Okay,
judgment debt industry.
I'm just going to restrict myself to two more issues, inconsistencies and then the specification cases. I think I'm going to make a reference to a letter that they published today in the Ghanaian Times of today. The letter is dated the 27th of November 2000.
You have 1 minute.
And I'm going to point out a couple of inconsistencies. Africa Automobile has already developed, delivered 21 gallopers on account of our order. This means that the figure has moved from 23 vehicles being delivered
To now
that
21.
is in Kwame Nkrumah's letter to 22, and now it has come to 21, in the letter, in the writ of summons, in the statement of claim attached to the writ of summons. We have 3 different figures for the vehicles that have been delivered. Number 2, the value of the contract. In the writ of summons in Professor Kwame Nkrumah's letter, we are told that it's 323.332. That is $3,322,000,000. Sorry, 3.332. Let's put
The
it like
figures
that.
are so overwhelming
It's
that
so overwhelming.
you can't even comprehend.
But in today's letter that they have published in the Ghanaian Times, a new figure of 3,553,000 is being quoted. The difference between the two is $231,000. Converted into Ghana cedis, that's 489.
Well,
this
Kofi,
is money that is unaccounted for.
Kofi, we have,
Perry, the point must be
a
made.
minute to wrap up, and I suggest that we come back and do a part 2 of this on Wednesday, and that
We must.
the topic would be the judgment debt industry.
We must, because the
On that
facts
note, let
of
me
this
go
case and the
for-
lies that have been told are just too many.
Let me go for the LPM, and viewers, we promise to do a part 2 of this because there's a lot to share. Parliament moves to clamp down on commercial motorbiking by passing a new legislation, but Okada riders are not happy and vow not to vote. What do you think about this new law, which also bans the use of phones while driving? Join the discussion tonight on PM Express at 9 p.m.
Perry, let me just add just one thing for Ghanaians to hear. Do you know that the case itself, in 2011, the case was taken out of court or discontinued for settlement? Martin Hamidou sent in a text message
And said he didn't know anything
and said,
about it. And
as
he was
AG,
sitting
he did not know
AG
anything about it.
at the time.
Who were the people who knew about it? Who were the people
His
trying
deputy was
to
head of
chop-
a
Ghana.
committee.
Thank
Yeah.
you very much. That's all. Ghanaians should look at all of this and decide for themselves what is going on. And they should not let anybody take them to be a fool, because nobody is a fool. All the things Okudeta, Black Kwame, Mr. Kwame Nkrumah are doing, they are trying to put sand in our gari, and I'll never eat that kind of gari.
And again, the point must be made that speaking about inconsistencies, the figure has moved, the claim of Africa Automobile has moved from 1.5 billion initially, as Okudeta Blackwa said. And today, in their own publication, they are giving us a figure of 1.6 billion.
Wow. Viewers, on that note, we'll still be galloping
1.6.
on Wednesday.